I am missing you all. It is a very quiet place here. Last week, I think we had a few more people in the building, but right at the moment, we're probably down to a couple dozen people, plus a few of our federal employees. And I say thank you to the federal employees who are coming in and doing the work to keep the building open and safe. It's pretty quiet here. I am sure that you all, please know that you can ask questions, and if you want to ask them directly or make a comment directly to me, feel free to do that. Otherwise, send them to Cynthia and she will forward them on to me. And I'm going to do everything I can to answer everything as thoroughly and completely and with as much information as possible. So many of you have probably heard all about the fact that the Kennedy Center is in the stimulus bill for $25 million. And that now still has to go to the House for approval. We have every confidence that it will, but until it's done, it's not done. Those funds have been really a big roller coaster for the last week. At this point, when I spoke to you last week, it wasn't clear that we could be a part of that, those bills in any case. And in fact, we had started all of the research and evaluation and scenario planning without having that information or that possibility in those plans. We learned over the weekend that the plan that was not approved ultimately did not have us in it. And so we began the week with the belief that we would not be receiving any funding, and it established a new direction in some of the work that we were trying to do and planning that we were trying to undertake. We are really grateful for this $25 million, but I will tell you that it does not keep us whole. In fact, the language that Tracy had worked so closely with all the appropriators was to make it clear that we needed this just to be able to reopen as and when we can reopen. This does not keep us whole along the way. Fortunately, Tracy has really great relationships on the Hill. We had fantastic support from board leadership, and all of those relationships and savvy, I will say, is what brought us that $25 million. Some of you are probably aware of the fact that we are now the target for a lot of unhappy people who believe that we are taking the money away from sick people. And in the case of a stimulus bill, it is to try and continue to do business and to stimulate the economy in the future. And in this case, this funding is pretty prescriptive in that it says you need to do this for operational expenses so that you can open up again after this closure, this period of time for the closure. What's different from previous funding from the federal government is that it will allow us to pay for things that the federal appropriation generally doesn't. So in this case, it will be able to be used for operational expenses, like what it takes for us as a staff to be able to make sure that the building is open and ready for programming and activity when we can reopen. I'm sorry that I seem very stumbly and less articulate today, but this is really, really challenging time. I know it's hard for you. I pray that you all are healthy and safe, and I'm grateful for your commitment, and I'm grateful for the work that you're doing from home. What I do need to say is this $25 million does not allow us to maintain our current structure. I have show and tell just a little bit just to give you a sense of all of it. So, ta-da! There are reams of pages like this. This is the one that I'm looking at right now, which is the baseline that our finance team have put together. And I will tell you that I'm going to go through a whole lot of numbers here because I want you to understand the level of detail that we have taken thus far and the work that, and I will then share with you the work that we're going to do moving forward. The baseline cash flow says that if we had not received any cash and everything stayed exactly as it is today, no changes, we would be, and we would draw fully on the line of credit, we would be out of cash on May 15th. Couldn't do anything further. So with no changes, with assuming we even could open on May 15th, we would have no cash to do the work moving forward. We extended that cash flow all the way through September 30, and we would be in arrears to the tune of $32 million. So again, with the $25 million and doing nothing, we still would be out $32 million. That's actually sort of why we were asking initially for $35 million from the federal government. Now, we've done a couple of other scenarios, and we're doing a fair bit of planning to try and understand what would happen if we can open up again on May 11. What happens if we have to wait till July, and what happens if we have to wait all the way until September to reopen. You all know very, very well that we have been living with a structural deficit, and that we have been using funds from Building the Future to make us whole each year. That structural deficit and that use of that cash has absolutely caught up with us. And so I'm glad that we have been talking about this for years, so this is not a surprise to you. But we are right in the vortex of the negative cash flow situation. I will tell you that we have been receiving phone calls. The phone room is very, very busy in the box office on the phones. They have now processed, as of last night, $2.5 million worth of transactions. That is a big spike since the last time I talked to you. Those requests for refunds and exchanges include a small number of donations. So out of $2.5 million, $58,000 are donations. Gift certificates are just over 200,000. So the vast majority of the $2.5 million, give or take 2.3, is cash going right back out to folks. Some of that is for our programming, and some of it is for rental programming, where we have been accepting the cash and the tickets, doing the transactions for those ticket sales. A couple more things I wanted to share with you. Each month, we have just under $5 million worth of payroll. So as I mentioned, and if we just kept going as usual, we'd have about $5 million that we'd have to come up with for payroll. That includes taxes, et cetera. Payroll taxes, et cetera, those kinds. Each month we spend about $500,000 on insurance. As you also know, sorry, I'm using alternative methods to scratch my. As you know, we have always had a very generous program where the Kennedy Center subsidizes the vast majority of our health benefits, and that's what our monthly take on. In addition, each month we have about just under $500,000 of other expenses, including, rent on a variety of locations, IT costs, and those are not ones that we can put off because we have to have internet, wireless, etc. And insurance, business insurance. So our overall nut is nearly $6 million a month. That's presuming we don't pay or do anything else. So I wanted to share that with you so that you would understand the magnitude of the issue, so that when I say $25 million doesn't solve the problem, particularly when our business model requires that the programming that is net positive continues to take place, and that contributions continue to come in. We have received some contributions, and in fact, it's kind of an interesting discussion internally to make sure that we go pick up the mail and that we check for checks. Today, we got a foundation saying, we're happy to tell you that we're going to give you $25,000. Please send this contract back and we'll send you $25,000. So we're going to get that processed really quickly. But the business model does require us to be presenting, particularly those performances that make money. And by having to cancel Jesus Christ Superstar, it has a negative impact on that positive. And of course, we have theater in the summer that we are looking forward to being able to present, and will be really important for us to be able to present. Not all of it, actually, some of it is already, unfortunately, having to be canceled. So the question you all want to know is, what's going to happen? And I will tell you that we've been doing a lot of work and a lot of scenario planning, but it's not going to be able to prevent us from having to take some actions. We are going to have furlough. We are going to have some layoffs, and for some, depending on circumstances, we're going to have some salary reduction. I have to tell you, I've never had to go through this, and I'm very, very, very sorry to tell you that it's on its way. But we've got to do it in order to be able to tighten the belt for a period of time so that we can come back. My goal is that we can do furloughs for a period of time so that those individuals will be able to come back ready when we can open the building again. I am not in this video conference, able to tell you exactly who those people are. It will be the beginning of next week when we have all of the details worked out. We have already furloughed the balance of the parking people. I told you that last week, and that process began on Monday. And we're just going to have to start doing that through the organization. I want very much to protect you to the degree we possibly can. The good news in a very bleak, difficult situation is that the stimulus package does provide pretty generous unemployment benefits. We are looking to extend our health benefits as long as possible, and certainly during the furlough. And we're working with Cigna to see how we can extend that to the degree possible. There are a lot of questions. I know you have a lot of questions. Barbara and the HR team are going to address all of them. We're not going to be able to address all of them in this telephone call because, frankly, we don't have all of the answers, and I don't have the specific names and individuals. But I felt like, given the fact that we know that the $25 million is coming in unless something crazy happens, that I needed to be in touch with you to let you know where we are with this. It's pretty complex, I'll tell you, and we need to look at how we are looking at this for the long term, because we can't just say pocket the cash and stay the same way we are today. So we will be working with each of you next week. We will have a complete FAQ on everything we can possibly imagine, what the benefits are, how it will be what will be paid out over a period of time, and all of that. We're too large a group, unfortunately, for me to be able to say, okay, this percentage this percentage that, this percentage the following in this communication. And because we only felt we understood what the 25 million was coming in yesterday, we're not really fully ready, just because of the scenarios underway. Let me look at a couple of these questions. What's the difference between a furlough and a layoff? Barbara, I'll start, and if you need to correct me, let me know. A furlough means that we are inviting you to come back when the furlough period has ended and when we're able to open again. A layoff means we don't believe that the job is going away, that we're not going to be able to welcome you back at the end of that period. Barbara, I feel kind of like that wasn't the most gracious answer. Do you have anything that you can say?
I can tweak it a little bit. So a furlough is for a specific period of time. The benefit of the furlough for an individual is that you can still collect unemployment, and we can still view you as what's called a common law employee, so that we can still provide medical benefits for some period of time for you. A layoff is different in the sense that obviously there's not an end term to that. You would still potentially be eligible for reemployment if we had the opportunity to do so. You would not receive medical benefits. You would have to pay for medical benefits through COBRA, but again, you could also apply for unemployment. This new legislation appears to be able to provide an enhanced benefit for a 4-month period. Unemployment can last up to 6 months, 26 weeks. And in the District of Columbia, it was in the $400 range maximum benefit. This would be $600 on top of that. So, fingers crossed that would go through. I hope that provides some clarity, Deborah.
Thank you. Sorry to be a little bit all over this. I want to make sure I don't miss some of the ones at the top. What does the stimulus cover and what does it not cover? As I mentioned, there is there very specific language that's written into the bill. You can actually find it online. We can share it. It is relatively broad, but as we were working with the appropriations staff and the senators and congressional leadership, this was all about being able to reopen. And so we have to be able to have the capacity to open and stay open. So it's not like we can spend all the money right now to keep everybody whole and then find ourselves without cash, because it really depends on how long we have to stay closed. And if we can open on May 1, that's one scenario. If we have to wait until June, that's another scenario. If we have to wait longer, even if we had to wait till June, I have grave concerns about the impact it'll have on the summer. We did a P&L, that means a profit loss, which is basically the income statement for this period. And if we stay, if we are able to reopen on May 11, we believe our losses actually on that kind of an income statement are already $21 million. If we stay open, if we have to stay closed until the end of June, that pops up to 30, and if we have to stay closed all the way till September, it's around $55 million loss to our institution. So it's not just cash that we're having to address, it's how we do our business moving forward. So the stimulus is cash that'll help us along the way. The great question, what should and this is not just the website, the question is, how should we be responding to inquiries and comments that are coming in through Contact Us. It's coming in on our social media, and it's coming in to our on our Facebook page, etc. There is language at present that is on our website. It is maybe a little official sounding, but it's accurate and it is concise. We're trying to draft something that is appropriate also for emails. So Miles will have that language, and he's getting it approved, and we can get it out to everybody so that you know. You will hear from your friends, gang. I am hearing from people. We are hearing from close donors. We are hearing from distant, generous donors. We're hearing from everybody, and most people don't understand it. Somebody wrote me saying, "Congratulations, I'm so excited for you." And I wrote back and I said, "This is a life preserver in a hurricane. It is not solving the problem, but it will help us open up. And hopefully that life preserver will keep the institution's head above water." But I really mean it. This is not a bailout. This is a life preserver in a hurricane. I came up with that when somebody said, "Woohoo, good for you." And I was like, sorry. It is, none of this is good for any of us. The country is having a devastating experience, and we are a part of it. I'm trying as hard as possible to keep us as whole as possible and be as fair as possible. So to one of the other questions, I wanted to say that the question was, are the unions issues being opened up? And yes, they are. We are, everybody is going to be a part of this. No one is going to be held harmless. I would make it an even more extreme comment, but I will leave it at that. Nobody is being held harmless. Everybody will have to participate in this. Will we be able to cash in accrued vacation before furlough? Yes is the answer. So that will be a piece of it. Accrued vacation will be paid out. While you're on furlough, you can't accrue vacation, but hopefully it won't be a very long furlough. But yes, the answer for a furlough is yes, you will be paid out your vacation. The next one is, what advice do you have for staff members who are seeing extremely negative and untrue comments about the center on social media? Please go to our website, look at that, and then we will share. Miles, can you make sure that once we get this language that you so kindly gave us a first draft on, can you please share it with everybody on staff? And if there is further inquiry, because that's not helpful enough, let us know, okay? It's very useful for us to know. What kinds of considerations are being made when evaluating which staff to furlough or lay off? Thanks. That's an important and personal and sensitive question. I will tell you that this is the hardest part. This is the part that has been really troubling me the most, because it will ultimately not be about who are our greatest people, because all of you are our great people. It is about essential personnel. It is about who is absolutely needed to make sure we can open again. So this is not going to be very much fun, guys, and it is going to feel really tough along the way. But we need to be able to make important decisions about how we can open up and what is necessary to be done during this period in order to know that we can open up. So that is the primary criteria for making those decisions. Barbara, is there anything else that you need to say on top of that?
No, I think our goal is to get an updated FAQ out to employees to capture some of the things you shared today with some additional information and links. And then as soon as we're able to share more comprehensive decisions, we will be doing outreach to employees and their managers so we can ensure everyone is the maximum benefits possible for them and has complete clarity about their situation.
Yeah, this is a related question. if you could, which says, will you allow people to volunteer to be furloughed? And I think the answer is yes. I think the answer would be yes. Thank you. But we will certainly be working department by department on this. Another question, which I think I answered, but it says, will the NSO musicians and other orchestra be furloughed? And as I mentioned before, all of our union folks are going to be hearing from us. Are we considering stopping matching payments for 403Bs as a way to conserve funds? Yes, we are. We are considering it. We just need to make sure that we can do things in the right time and the right way legally. Before we start furloughs, layoffs, and salary reductions, can we try and get everyone to donate a percentage of their salary back to the center? I would imagine many people would be willing to donate back. Thank you for that question. That is an approach that we have been talking about. We've had a few board members ask that question. Unfortunately, I'm not sure I can get to the number we need. That unfortunately will also be a part of it, that the people, the essential personnel that we need to keep here will be a part of it. It's been heartbreaking, and as I said, I think I said last week, I know I said it to some, I was trying to figure out a way where we could do something like that so that we could hold as many people as harmless in this as possible and to keep people. But the more we're learning about the unemployment benefits, it is clear that in some cases it's really going to be more valuable for individuals to be furloughed so that they can collect unemployment than to actually contribute back. But again, that's why we can't just do across the board. It all sort of depends on individual circumstances, i.e. what they're compensated for, what they do, et cetera, et cetera. But the reduction in salary is definitely a piece of it. A board member said, well, what if we had everybody just get paid 50%? The problem is that you can't really do it across the whole institution from a legal perspective. But there are some people who have already taken a 50%. I think I may have told you I had already cut my salary by 50%, but actually on Monday I realized that that was not appropriate. So I'm reducing it to the level where I can make sure I pay my health benefits as my portion of contribution, etc. So I am foregoing a salary fully at this point. I think I might need to earn a little bit so that I'm not a volunteer. But again, we're only doing it on what's a legal basis. You will hear. Who will I hear from regarding my employment status? Manager, director, VP. I believe the right answer, Barbara, help me again, is that you will hear from your manager. But in some cases, the manager is going to have to learn a lot of legalese and a lot of other issues. So I'm working with each department head, and then they will talk with each of the team members. Barbara, I'm sorry. I'm being clumsy. Yeah. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm feeling very not great about this, so I'm not being as articulate as I could be.
Deborah, you're correct. What we will do is it will be a cascade through Office of the President leaders down through their organization. We'll provide detailed information so they give the exact same and critical information to impacted staff. We're going to provide FAQs. We're going to provide information for each impacted employee so they know what the step 1 and step 2 and step 3 situational piece for them should be, whether it's about their medical benefits, applying for unemployment, or they're not being impacted at all, or what if they're furloughed. All of that information we're going to provide to each leader so that they have information for each of their team members.
I have two related questions, Eileen, that you might want to think about. One says, how are we handling the huge amount of negative backlash we are receiving? And one is, the statement we released yesterday got a lot of negative feedback. Are we planning on putting out another statement? I'll move back and you can come to the phone and maybe provide some answers. Just don't touch anything.
Do I get on my knees?
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. We did feel it was important yesterday I'm going to use your chair.
Okay.
To say something, because obviously it was the topic du jour as the bill was being debated on the Senate floor. So I would say that is phase one of the communications. We will be updating the language probably later today or as soon as the bill is passed in the House. I realize there are lots of negative comments. I will say that I received over 400 phone calls yesterday from people across the country. So we are getting hit from all sides. Chris George has reminded us that it is not everyone. We are hearing from the vociferous, I'm not going to say the vociferous few, but we're hearing from a lot of people who don't quite understand the nature of our business model. So what we've done for this first phase is really try to explain something that is very complicated. And that's what you see today. I would encourage everyone to stick to that language, and then we'll send a shorter version that you can use to respond to emails. We should have that in the next 20 minutes or so. Does that answer the question?
Thanks.
And I will say, I was talking to my fiance last night, we can't carry everyone with us. It's a complex story, and if we say too much, then everything will get picked apart. I mean, it's already getting picked apart. If you have ideas for how we could make this clearer, knowing that we won't win everybody over, everyone has my email. You can certainly send it to me. I realize that we live in a digital world, and on social media, you can't have 3 or 4 paragraphs. So I'm certainly open to suggestions as we all get through this together. Okay.
Just doing a little daily cleanup here. How are decisions being made about furloughed or laid off? So division heads have been asked to provide that input, and then Barbara and I are meeting with each individually to discuss and review it. So it is being done on multiple levels. So do I understand correctly that this Kennedy Center got money from the stimulus bill, but it's not enough to prevent us from having to do furloughs and layoffs? Yes, that is correct. That's why I wanted to start with the cash flow that said, absent that money coming in, we would be out of cash and unable to move forward as of mid-May. And that's why I laid out the specifics of what it is that we spend our money on if we paid nothing else during that period of time. So the $25 million will be used to ensure that we can get through this period and open up and then stay open. And we will have to make some decisions along the way, certainly. Can you please repeat if benefits will be maintained if a staff person is furloughed? Yes, that is what we're working on. Cigna has already confirmed to us that for the period of time until we would be reopened. Thank you for this. Have there been any, for lack of a better term, wackos showing up to voice their displeasure about the funding? We have not had anybody come to the center. We've had communications from some people who were excessively negative, but we have not had anybody here at the building. Do you know the numbers and the percentages of staff being furloughed? No, I don't have that specific number, and I'm not using it based on a specific number at this point. Are we planning on releasing another statement? Yes, we will be releasing another statement shortly. Next question is, do we have a guess on how many people will need to be furloughed? No, I don't. And here's a really interesting one. Can the President of the United States force us to reopen? I don't know the answer to that question. He didn't force us to close, and so I don't know. Tracy, do you know?
So you're asking on whether or not the President of the United States can force the Kennedy Center to reopen? No, he can't unless the federal government wants to provide additional funding in which to make that happen. Because we are the 501c3 business, he cannot require us to do that.
So here's a clarifying question. Will supervisors be notified of HR staff changes in advance, or will supervisors find out about their staff at the same time as those impacted employees? I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure if that's a question about the HR staff or if it's about everybody on staff. At the moment, the only people who've been involved with understanding and some scenario planning on staffing and furloughs are, as far as I know, the senior leadership team. Maybe there's been some other communication, but it's not been one that I have authorized or encouraged. So it is entirely possible that over the course of the next few days, there will be a little bit more conversation with supervisors so that we have a broad communication strategy established, and that it doesn't just come out with a click of the button. But that specific timeline hasn't been resolved. Barbara, is there something you want to correct on that?
Actually, Deborah, I think your answer to that is absolutely correct. We are working specifically with the OOP on these types of analyses, and obviously if there are some more concrete decisions made, there might need to be involvement on the part of folks a few levels down just to make sure that we're making accurate assessments. But if I could, I wanted to clarify a response you made earlier about benefits continuing throughout a furlough. Some of that is not fully a Kennedy Center decision. There are specific statutes and laws that drive decisions around employee benefits that we must follow, and then Cigna actually will make a determination about what they're prepared to extend to us in terms of furloughed employee status. At this time, they are not going beyond May 31st. So things are subject to change as the pandemic continues, but I did not want to give the impression that it's an open-ended benefit coverage piece. We're in contact with them constantly to make sure, and that date has actually been extended twice since the pandemic has begun, so it could potentially change, but as of yet, it is only till May 31st that we could offer extended benefits continuation to furloughed employees.
So a couple more questions about furloughs. And I really do understand, and I've been in my heart debating all of this because this question is so appropriate, and it says, is it possible to give people who will probably be furloughed a heads up sooner than next week so we can prepare? It will be very difficult to sit on this for a few days. I do completely understand that. I suppose no. I mean, the hard part is that we are a family of 671, and it's doing a drip, drip, drip is hard because Mary could hear that she is going to be furloughed, and Susie, who has a similar job, is dying to know if she is also going to be furloughed, and we just don't have all the information yet, and so that's what's really hard about it. I felt like because we got the information about the funding, that I needed to be in touch with you, and then getting all of the negative blowback, I felt all the more reason that I needed to be in touch with you. But I also know that we don't have this all 100% in place at this time. So I felt like it was better for us to tell you that it's coming and that we will get it to you absolutely as soon as possible, and that in the process we will help you understand how to apply for unemployment, et cetera, so that to the degree that you can be kept as whole as possible, we will do that. This question says, what do we think the scale of the layoff and the furlough is? It's sounding like just a few people in each department will remain. It really is going to depend on how we determine essential business moving forward. We absolutely have to create revenues. We absolutely have to deposit revenues. But we also have to be ready as soon as we reopen, whatever form that takes. So it is not going to be uniform across the institution. And I say that because I don't want anybody to think that there are favorites or, one department is more loved or more respected or more valued. It's really about us figuring out how we can be as healthy as we can. And we're going to do that based on what we know today. I will tell you that the people who remain are going to have a tough time, and a good majority of them are likely to be asked for a salary reduction as well. It all depends on what that rate of pay is, what the legal ramifications are, et cetera, et cetera. How are contractors going to be handled? I believe that this has multiple answers. If we have contractors who are doing work for us on the sort of trust side, administrative side, we should be hitting pause on those contracts and or terminating those contracts if they haven't already been. And we must do so really quickly. I'm not going to have our staff furloughed and have a contractor who's not doing a project. Now, if there's some projects that we absolutely have to have, I will tell you that there's probably one contractor, but I'm hoping, working on it being pro bono, because we've asked BDO to come in and help us with scenario planning and forecasting. And in that case, that work is essential for our ongoing business. There are other contractors who are here doing business, and those are all federal contractors. So we're installing the tree out in the Grove. We have some work taking place in the building here. Those contractors are either others, like Restaurant Associates, or federal contractors, and that work continues. Is there anything else? Am I correct on that, Ellery?
That's right.
Thank you. So when will we hear about the status of our employment? My goal is to get it to you as soon as we possibly can. I don't believe that can be tomorrow, but I believe that we will do it for you at the beginning of the week. Why layoffs when we could do just furloughs? That's a really great question. Part of it is actually understanding what the institution may end up having to look like after all of this. So we have gone back and forth about that. But in some cases, it may be that we don't see how we're going to be able to continue in that particular area for a period of time. Look, this is, a deeply difficult period of time. There's only one saving grace, which is we're not alone. This isn't because people don't love the Kennedy Center. This isn't because we're not important. This is because our country, our world is in a horrible, horrible crisis. And this is, like any other crisis, going to be defining for who we are in the future. Having gone through major economic and life crises in a leadership role, this being the third one of this sort just in this century, in this short century so far, we know that this institution will be a different institution later. So this is the moment for us to say, okay, how are we best going to do this work? How can we still deliver on our mission and do so in this new environment? And so that is a part of this discussion, and it's got to be moving forward. We've been talking, this whole concept of what are our core activities, what is essential to understanding our mission, how much of what we do is necessary. I don't think any of us believe that the work that we've done is not necessary. It's all important, but how much of it, to what degree, and to what degree do other people do what we're doing? And perhaps we should allow others to do that. So that question is going to be those questions are going to be the ones that we ask ourselves moving forward. Some of them I think we might know today. Some of them we might know over a period of time. So on that point, let me just say that the board has already come together, and we have a special advisory task force that will be our partners, our leaders through this. It will talk about all manner of how we think about this, from scenario planning, thinking about who we are long-term into the future, and what the financial model is. We have some really, really smart board members, and some of them are ones that have been around for the last 6 years, and some of them are new ones. And they've already been very responsive and are eager to be helpful. So we have a board-level task force looking at this situation. Here's a question. There seems to be a lot of confusion regarding those who are already applying for unemployment. Can we please have a one sheet explaining what information is needed when one goes and applies? That's a great question. I've heard from Barbara that there are some forms that are not being completely completed accurately, and therefore have to take an extra couple of steps. So I know the HR team is working on making sure that is streamlined and a little bit easier.
So we had sent information to those supervisors for those individuals who were impacted, the part-timers who were impacted, and temporary workers previously, with specific instructions on unemployment. We're going to be posting an updated FAQ for staff, and in that it will encompass instructions so that people can certainly fill out the information correctly. And I can tell you that payroll has been processing things as rapidly as possible. We've received, the last count I heard, well over 100. So as soon as they are received, we're offering corrections and fixing things as we can. We don't have anything to do with the approval of the unemployment. Ultimately, that would be DC Unemployment's offices, but we're correcting all the information that if we see there are errors, and you can certainly reach out to HR for assistance, but we will be posting new updated information so people can see it.
This is an interesting question, Barbara. Is Cigna offering no-cost testing if we present symptoms? And what about treatment? Is there anything that we can share further on that topic?
Yes, I had sent out to all staff, I believe it was last week, an update from Cigna. I can resend for everyone's ease. But yes, Cigna is offering telehealth, COVID-related, and testing, free testing, and other assorted benefits for those folks impacted by the COVID virus. And I can update and send out some information again, but it was sent out last.
Here's a good question. Could furloughs be taken, are furloughs taken in consecutive days or weeks, or could it mean 1 to 2 days a week? I asked that specific question. I even asked if it could be 1 week on, 1 week off, etc. And what I have learned is that in order to apply for successfully for unemployment, it needs to be consecutive. So we are trying, while there are a lot of other creative ways to think about this, we want to make sure that people can apply for unemployment. There are a couple questions about salary reductions. These changes are ones that we are taking as a first step. I am hoping that, but hope is not a strategy. I've learned that over and over again in my life. But I want people to be as whole and as safe as possible. This is really important, and it's really, really tough. I want to be able to furlough and bring people back. I want to be able to find ways for us to do cost savings and then make people whole. We will do that to the degree that we possibly can all across the institution and as fairly as we possibly can. I will not look at one person and say, I'm not going to make you whole, and then go to another person and say, I'm going to make you whole. That is one of the deepest values of who I am, and I need to be able to look at each of you and say that I'm doing the best to treat everybody as fairly as I possibly can. But I also have to do this for the long-term health of the institution. So while I'd love to say absolutely these would only be temporary, I don't know the answer to that. My strategy, hope is not a strategy, my effort, my goal would be for us to be as whole as possible at the end of this, but we're going to be a different organization. This is a question about the Department of Education grant, and that would be also true of restricted giving. We certainly have restricted gifts in other ways, and the question is, will sufficient staff be maintained to continue those kinds of grant and contract obligations, such as Department of Education? But certainly we have this question as it relates to the Mellon grant and other things. We are having conversations with those funders. I'm having one with an individual later today, I hope, and we'll see. Greater flexibility would be good because it can help the institution. On the other hand, there are obligations such as the Department of Education where they have an obligation certainly to others and taxpayers as well. So this will be a part of the evaluation of what we end up having to make decisions around furloughs, et cetera. We will not break any contracts to the best of my ability. Thank you for asking a different question. How will this affect the plans for the 50th anniversary? So there are two components, at least, to the 50th anniversary. One is the federal memorial refresh, and a lot of that work is being done by our federal employees, and they continue to do that, and they continue to do that with the contractors who are doing that work through the federal appropriation process. So the work that is the physical work here at the building continues. We're at the schematic phase, as you remember from our last staff meeting. So they are moving through that process. We don't have a new estimation that says we can't do it or can't get it done in a particular time. We may come up on that in the next months, but right at the moment we are still on pace for that work. That said, the 50th anniversary included a lot of programmatic activity, and we are having to reevaluate that. I know that the programmers here in particular are really thoughtfully looking at the 2021 season and the 21-22 season, because our new reality is likely to be that we may not be able to have the opportunity to raise the additional funds that we were hoping to raise for that celebration. So we are part of the essential work of the next weeks is about reimagining how we put the 2021 season together as well as the 21-22 season. So there will be some impact. I can't tell you exactly what yet. If an employee will be furloughed or laid off, when does their supervisory team learn about this? We will be rolling this out as we are able to make some decisions, but I'm not going to say, well, let's work on the finance department and then let them know, and then I'm going to go over to the education department and let them know. That's not going to, that will be difficult. So my hope is that we will be able to have it all happen simultaneously, but people are going to have to be involved with the decision making between now and then. Yes, we will absolutely do our best to help everybody file for unemployment. And in fact, I had a trustee offer for his firm to help with outplacement for those people who might be in the position of having to look for a new job. So stay tuned for more of that. Our senior staff is likely to be laid off or furloughed as the everyday worker, and their salaries have a bigger liability. That's a really good question. I think it's appropriate to ask. That's why I already told you that I'm foregoing my increase. Last week, our senior managers all agreed to take a reduction in theirs as well, and we're going to have to look at this across the institution. Got to find the people who are essential and have to be the ones here versus the ones who can be furloughed for a period of time. I don't know the answer to, does unemployment apply to contractors? I suppose it depends. I don't know the answer.
It depends, because each contractor may have multiple streams of income, and it depends on what state that income comes from. And so the Kennedy Center does not pay unemployment insurance for contractors, so it really depends on their situation, whom else they work for, and if they contact the Department of Unemployment, they can provide them some guidance on that issue.
Thank you for that clarity. There's another question about if extended benefits are in negotiation. So we know from Cigna that the benefits extend through May, and then if we are still in furlough past that time, we will be negotiating with them, and certainly COBRA is an option thereafter. There are questions about warning and ramp-up period of time, and that's why we want to get to you as soon as we possibly can so that you have as much ramp-up time and awareness. So this is the furlough through reopening, i.e. no specific end time. What I had been thinking about previously is that we believe that we're going to be opening on May 10, and therefore a furlough would be through some period of time up to that time. But if we can't open, it's going to have a different ramification. So when we do this, we will communicate with you on the specific timetable. We all need to stay safe. We need to bend the curve. We need to do as much as we possibly can so that we can reopen on May 11. So there are lots and lots of questions about how we're going to determine the furloughs, and it is not going to be possible, and maybe there's a specificity to the question that I am not understanding, but it really is going to be around essential business for getting us open, and who needs to be here during this period of time. So you can't say the manager of this and in one department and the manager of that in another department have the same role, and therefore both should stay or be furloughed. It really depends on the role that they play in keeping the business going forward. So I guess I need to say to you, that's why I and Barbara, as well as your team, so it's not like I'm saying, dear supervisor of this department, you need to